Hi, everybody. I'm Sigfried Trent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes, and t-shirt folder for SigTrent Games. Today, I'm going to tell you what's going on with SigTrent Games for week 23. I'm going to offer a little bit of game design advice, sort of, and we will talk about my life in general. So, week 23, what's going on? Well, lots of going on with Shotgun Fantasy. I actually did get a lot of writing done last week, which I'm very happy about, especially because I'm not going to get a lot of writing done this week. We'll get to that later. But it was very successful. I worked on fantasy equipment first and foremost. So I did all the basic bits and bobs, swords and bows and axes and things that you are going to need for fantasy play. It's very important to me that with Shotgun Fantasy, you can make a complete fantasy hero in the Everyday Heroes rule system so that you can take them off to other worlds, or if you want to, adventure in that fantasy world, and that you have the appropriate material if you're a modern character coming back to a fantasy world, that you have lots of stuff to interact with, and classes that you could adopt and grow into and learn how to cast magic and all that kind of good stuff. So you got to have gear. Now, I decided not to give much of the way of descriptions of this gear. I think we all know what chainmail is. We all know what a broadsword is, mostly. We all know what an axe is and a mace and these kinds of things. The equipment list is not so detailed as to have the differences between this kind of halberd and that kind of glaive or any of that kind of stuff. But it's got enough mechanical variety that each weapon is going to have a somewhat unique role in the game. And if you build a certain kind of character, you're going to gravitate towards certain kinds of weapons. And we're going to have enough weapon choices that the fighter class, which in the way I've constructed it is a somewhat equipment-focused class, is going to have different choices to make in what they want to specialize in and what kind of gear they want to run with. And fighters will definitely be able to go kind of for fast, agile style, big, strong, tough guy, or tanky type of character, and you can do all that with the same class. Should be pretty cool. So anyway, no detailed descriptions. That also just keeps the word count down a little bit for stuff that would be unnecessary fluff, because anybody who's picking this book already kind of knows fantasy play, but you will need the stats. Now, you could use the stats for these kinds of historical weapons that are going to appear in other books. They won't always be exactly the same. I wrote a little note about that in the book. That's because, let's say, a broadsword from the 15th century might be different from a fantasy broadsword from a broadsword in the 12th century. So it's quite possible that some broadswords could do a D8 damage and some broadswords could do a D10 damage, or that they could have this penetration value or that, etc., etc. So if you see slightly different stats between different Everyday Heroes books, use whichever one makes the most sense for your character or for the period of genre that you're in. I think the note that I wrote is a little more succinct than that, but that's the idea. But anyway, you should find the equipment list interesting and useful, I think, even if you have the vault and the core rulebook and all that stuff. There'll be some good stuff in there, but just don't expect it to be really elaborate. I'm going to save more of that for magic items and spells and the stuff that's interesting and unique. I also worked on the Isekai play section, so that's been detailed and almost finished. I'm going to say that's like 75% there. I got a little bit stuck on Isekai stories where characters are split, and so sort of their psyche travels into another world and inhabits a new body, either through reincarnation or through possession or through whatever it means it happens to be. You go to the realm of heaven and you have a new spiritual body with new powers. That kind of stuff is definitely a little more complex, especially if you're going to hop back and forth between the worlds and you're going to play in your normal self in your normal body and then play in the fantasy realm, but with your new psyche. So how to handle all that, that's complex. So I want to provide good guidance to the game master, both mechanically and for storytelling, to help them create the best experience for the players. So I'm still working on that because the mechanics of it, there's a lot of different directions you can go, and I want it to be relatively easy and at most involve like 2 character sheets or 1 character sheet and just some different sets of talents that you can switch back and forth between, or maybe just some stat adjustments. I haven't completely decided, so I'm still working on that aspect of it, but it should be cool. I think it will be very cool, and I'm on a good path for it. What else going on with Shotgun Fantasy? I'm just jogging my memory of all the stuff that I wrote because I did write a lot of things. I think that's most of it for this week. All right, let's move on to Modern Magic. No, not Modern Magic anymore. As I said in last week's essay, you pick a name for a product, you think it's a great name, you think you've cleared it out, and then when you tell the public, which I did, somebody's going to know about a product that you didn't know about or found it somewhere where you didn't find it. In this case, my game master found it on Amazon. In fact, he also had it on his bookshelf, Modern Magics by Green Ronin. So that name is out, which is fine. I'm thinking of going with Night Magic or Night Magics now. I'm not sure which of those sounds snazzier. Night, not as in knights in shining armor, but as in late nights at the club and disco and underground magic club. So that's kind of the theme of the spells and stuff. So that works for the title, and it sounds pretty cool. Night magic, ooh, spooky, mysterious, interesting. Those are all words that I would like to be associated with this book. So we'll see. I think it's on a good track. I think that's a good name. However, if there's a night magic out there, I haven't found it yet. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So my loyal friends, keep looking. And if you find one, let me know. Now, if it has other words in it and stuff, that's fine. Just so long as it's not night magic / night magics, that'd be good. I also worked a little bit on that book. I had a goal of converting 20 spells into my new system for everyday heroes, and I didn't quite get there. I got about 5 of them. But I did get a ton of work done on Shotgun Fantasy, so no regrets there. But we're going to go back and do some more of that. I don't have a deadline for these books yet, except I would really, really, really like to get them finished writing by the end of August. I'm hoping more mid-August, but we'll see how things go. In other news, I also got the Shadow Markets and Debatable Actions up on Sidekick. You can find them under SigTrent Games. I talked with Louis Porter Jr. about it. Now, mostly we sell on drive-through, where we just split the profits automatically. Drive-through has a great system for that. Sidekick doesn't really have a system for that, so one of us had to put them out there. I have experience with formatting things on Sidekick, so I went ahead and did it, and then the proceeds will get split still between me and LPJ if you want to buy them there. And of course, Evil Genius Games and Dave gets a cut as well because that's their platform, which is fair. I've got them both priced at $5. Debatable Actions is a little bit smaller than Shadow Markets. I think the Shadow Markets is $5. This is a super good deal, so definitely jump on that. It's got 2 classes, got a bunch of feats, a bunch of background stuff, 2 new character paths, and a whole bunch of crazy illicit drugs for your characters to take. It is rated for adults on Sidekick, so it's mature content. It's not super edgy mature content, but definitely we're going to call it mature content. What else we got? Hero sheets are on there. So, of course, you can get hero sheets on Sidekick as well. You can also get them on my website, and you can get them on DriveThruRPG. So, yeah, enjoy those. By the way, if you get Debatable Actions, it does come with a download. It's in, I forget, they're called downloads when we put them in, and then it has a slightly different name when you're actually buy the project and use it. But look under the resource materials where you can download character sheets. We used to download them. Now they're in the game. Whatever the case. Look for the file. It's basically cards that you can print out because that system works best if you print those cards and then you use them for reference during the game. It just works better than looking them up in the book or on a PDF or something like that. So my suggestion, definitely down those if you're going to do Debatable Actions, which, by the way, is pretty fun. We did get to use it in the game that I'm playing. The Game Master bought it. We used it a couple times. It's a pretty cool system. It's kind of fun if role-playing a debate in a game sounds fun to you. If that doesn't sound fun to you, don't bother with it. Just get Shadow Markets because it's cool no matter what. All right. Next up, game design tip of the week. This tip is not to do a lot specifically with game design, but this is a tool that I use in the game design and publishing process, which is checklists. I think checklists are great. I don't use them quite as much as I should, which we'll talk about later, but I really like checklists a lot. So why should you use them? First of all, they help you with consistency. Consistency is very important in a profession. That includes game design and game publishing. So you want your products to be good every time. If you have a bad product, it can really hurt your reputation. So consistency is great. Ideally, you don't want everything to be the same. You want it to always be improving in quality, going up, right? That's good. But you don't want to slip backwards. And checklists are going to help you not only maintain what you've done before, but as you refine your process, you can improve your checklists, and you can do better and better and better and consistently improve. And that is awesome. Next thing that they do, for me at least, is to clear my head of little details that I do not want to remember and that I will inevitably forget or get wrong. And so if I write it down and make a checklist, I cannot forget, I cannot do it wrong. I must read and I must check off the little thing when I do the thing that I'm supposed to do. And then I can just not think about it that hard. All I have to do is read and obey, and I'm good to go. Otherwise, oh, did I miss anything? Did I forget something? No, I got a checklist. I know. I didn't forget it. It's right there. I checked it off. Good to go. Makes me very happy. Uh, Finally, they're really useful if you're working with other people on a collaborative team. Everybody can see the progress of something that has a checklist to see how many of the things got checked off, what still needs to be done, what has been done already. If somebody else needs to pick up the project and you have to go on vacation or whatever it is, they can look at the checklist and they can know where they're at. And then you know that they're doing the process correctly because they are reading the checklist and checking off the items. So that's great. It's just really good for collaborative teamwork and an excellent and easy and quick way to communicate how to get the job done and to do it well. When should you use checklists? Well, you don't use them all the time. You don't need a checklist to brush your teeth necessarily. You don't need a checklist to write a good story. But you do need them for a lot of processes. I would say anything that has more than 4 steps can benefit from a checklist. 4 or less steps, you probably will just remember. Especially if you've done it a few times. It's not necessarily bad. You can have them. But if you have too many checklists, it can get overwhelming and kind of silly, to be honest. So yeah, if you 4 or more items, I guess, something like that. They're very important if you're going to do critical work that needs to be done right the first time. The first time I read a serious book about checklists, it had to do with advocating for the use of checklists in surgery. Area where you do not want to make mistakes. They could cost somebody their life if you do not do the proper processes. So it is the perfect place for a checklist because a surgeon may do a surgery 100 times. They may do it 100 times in a year. One mistake is one life. In other areas, yeah, you make a mistake, that's fine. You can just fix it. In surgery, you might not get a chance to fix the mistake that you made. So very important that you do it right the first time and every time. So there are times, let's say in publishing, when you send the book off to the printer and they're going to run the presses and make your books. Well, you want to make sure that you did everything correctly that you were supposed to do, because if a mistake happens, it's going to be very expensive to fix it or very hurtful for your reputation if you don't fix it. So that's a good case for using a checklist. All the things you need to do before you send print files or give the order to print the book. Things that you're going to do often, but not all the time. So if you're doing it every day, in and out, you're probably going to have a routine, and it's going to be kind of hard actually for you to forget things. But if you have something that you do once a week every week, or you do it 6 times a year, then that's a really good candidate for a checklist. If it's something that you're just going to do once ever, it's not a good candidate for a checklist most of the time. Unless you think you're going to forget something important that you know up front, it's just less likely. So those aren't great time for checklists. Just make sure as you're doing it, you do it correctly, I guess. Be thoughtful. You have to be thoughtful to make the checklist anyway, so should be fine. So repeated tasks, but maybe not ones you do every day. Finally, anywhere where you have frequently had problems in the past. If you have done something, let's say for me, like self-editing a book, and there are certain mistakes that you tend to make, like spelling people's names incorrectly, or using a synonym for a word that you shouldn't be using, or punctuating things in a way that you shouldn't be punctuating, or for me, excessive capitalization. I love to make things capital sometimes when they really don't need to be. Then these are things that you should make a checklist for so that you don't make those mistakes again. If you know that you are prone to them, especially if you do them more than once, yeah, put it on a checklist. Have a technique where you can purge that out of your list, and you should be good to go. So when do I use them? Wow. We just discussed the biggest one that I use, which is self-editing. It's a little bit of a specialized situation because different books call for some different things that I need to do on my checklist, but I kind of have like a master checklist that has a bunch of the different kinds of things I need to do, and then I'll just edit it down for the book that I'm doing and the things that need to be there. And usually one of the items is check for special things and add those to the list for that particular book, because there may be certain words I'm likely to misspell that are in that book but not in other books, the names of specific characters that I need to go over, certain things that I'm not supposed to mention because of the license properties, whatever it is, you got to go over and check those things out. So checklists, good for that. And then when you've checked them all off, you know you've done a good job. I don't use them often as I should. That's kind of one of my bullet points here. Not as often as I should. That's when I use them. So I should do checklists more often, more consistently. Super consistency is a little bit of a problem with mine, and checklists fix that. So that's a reason I should use them more. I use them for weekly goals. Now, I use a Kanban board, but it's kind of like a glorified checklist in many regards, and it does have checklists incorporated into it. So that's a way I keep track of what I've done and what I need to do to kind of keep my head clear. So I do that all the time. The later stages of a project, here as I get towards the end of Shotgun Fantasy, I have a list of different areas of the book I need to double check on and areas that I need to tie together. I also have essentially a checklist of notes that I've made as I've gone along, telling myself I'm probably going to need to come back and revisit this once I have another section done to make sure they synergize with each other. Like I said, that's kind of like that fine tuning of game design documents and stuff. So that's an important area there. It's sort of an implicit checklist, but nonetheless, I think it is one. Deploying a product, this is something I had to do in my software engineering days, but it also applies to publishing as well. Like I talked about the book printing, but also sending it off to an editor. There are certain steps that you want to take, certain things that you want to have done before you do that. Same with giving art orders. You want to make sure you have coverage in the book. You want to make sure you've done the page counts correctly. You want to make sure you've got a proper code for the book so it doesn't get confused with other art orders, so on and so forth. Lots of processes that's very useful to have a checklist if you do it over and over again to do it the right way. All right, so that's it about checklists today. You probably heard that word way too many times. Let's move on to what I've been doing this week. I've been playing, as for games, Baldur's Gate 3. Once again, jumped back into that. Had some fun with MechWarrior, but I was getting a little bit bored with it, actually, before I'd finished the campaign. Baldur's Gate 3 is just such a fun game. I decided to pick up and play a little bit. There's a, what do you call it, an achievement for playing a character that has one of every class. You can get 12 levels, and there are 12 classes, and you can multi-class freely. So you have to make a character that has one of every class, gets to maximum level, and doesn't respec, right? So you can't sort of go pure fighter, and then at the end, bloop, bloop, bloop. Okay, I take one of every class, I get my achievement, bloop, bloop, I go back to being a full fighter. Nope. You got to play the whole game that way. Is that an optimal way to play the game? It absolutely is not. It does not work out very well when you have one of every class. The only thing it's really good for is the dialogue part of the game, because every class has some unique dialogues that will either give you advantage on rolls or simply let you bypass a situation because your class has a specialty of dealing with that kind of a problem, or you're talking to somebody who's the same class as you, and so you have a little bit of more rapport than you otherwise would. Well, if you have all the classes, you get all those dialogue options. Sometimes you get like 4 or 5 in one conversation. You can pick which crazy thing that you want to do. Now, you don't get all the classes until pretty late in the game. You're going to get max level. So you kind of pick and choose as you level up. Now, I did not choose them for dialogue options because I don't know what all those class dialogue options are through the game. It's just one of the benefits you get with that character. By and large, the only thing that really stacks up good, now one thing, 5th edition, your proficiency bonus goes up in a steady way. That's great. So in that sense, you're not terrible at hitting people or terrible at casting spells. But you're going to get no feats, and the feats in Baldur's Gate 3 are really powerful. So that hurts, and feats are also the main way you can raise your ability scores. So the ability scores you get at character generation are the ones you're going to have through the whole game, except for items that maybe you can buff your stuff with. And those take up a valuable item slot. They're not always the best in slot to buff ability scores. Sometimes it still is, especially early in the play, but at any rate. And the spell levels kind of stack. So if you take a wizard level and a sorcerer level, your access to higher level spell slots will go up. Doesn't necessarily mean you get higher level spells. Now, wizard, you can learn through scrolls. So if you get 3rd level spell slots, you can mem 3rd level wizard spells if you find scrolls for them. You're not going to get offered them during character generation, so you have to be a bit of a scroll hoarder. But the maximum you can get is level 3 slots. I was hoping I might eke up to level 4, but it's not going to happen. I've only got 2 classes left to go, I believe. Fighter and monk. Yeah, fighter and monk I still have left. Those are not going to give me any spell slots. So yeah, I'm pretty much stuck with level 3 spells and mediocre ability scores. And of course, you're only getting 4th level talents in all the classes, which are, you get a lot of little things. So I get like almost every cantrip in the game, but you don't get a lot of powerful things. So it's definitely a challenging character. The areas you can specialize in, like I said, are talking to people and also your character's defenses, your saving throws, and you can get a pretty good armor class because you get access to all the armor and equipment and stuff. So that's not too bad, but yeah, it's a tough character to play. Anyway, but it's no problem because you got 3 other characters and you can min-max those guys all that you like. Now, I did apply myself an unwritten rule, which is I can't respec them either. So I just have to stick with whatever choices I make as they level up. That's purely self-imposed, not part of getting that achievement. Anyway, Baldur's Gate 3. What a game. Okay, moving on. Nomad Anne's streaming channel. She finished Siberia 1 and 2. She's moving on to Siberia 3, which apparently she's been told is not the best game ever, but we'll see how it goes. I'm eager to see what her opinion is of it. And once she's finished, I think there's one more Siberia game after that. That's quite a recent one. I'm curious to see what her opinion on the whole thing is. I've really been enjoying her synopsis of these games and her kind of review of them. Of course, Siberia 1 and 2, if you've never played them, they're kind of adventure game classics. They're really good. They're well written. They're entertaining. They got good puzzles. High quality games. I learned from Anne that they were actually written to be one game, but they didn't quite have the budget to finish. So they made Siberia 1, and then they raised enough money to make Siberia 2. So they have a very good continuous story arc over those 2 games that really fits together because originally it was written as one story. But Siberia 1 does have a good conclusion to it. So they did make a nice break that feels like a completed tale, but continues perfectly into the next one. Quite the feat. All right. What else about life in general? So I got gift shop overload this week. One of my coworkers was sick, and being the slightly heroic sort of person I am, I tried to cover for them as much as possible. And that means I had to spend like a full day in the gift shop by myself. I don't like being by myself in the gift shop so much. I just get kind of bored. I mean, I got all the customers, so I don't get too bored. But it's nice to have a coworker. It's good to have comrades. I like working with other people more than I like working completely alone. At home, I always have Anne here, so that's always great, and we work together on everything. So I don't know. It wasn't a great hardship, but it wasn't my favorite thing. And I had planned to spend the day off working on Shotgun Fantasy, making this video, and instead I had to go into the gift shop. And by the time I got home, I was exhausted and kind of demoralized. But look, that's life. Like you gotta do things. You gotta earn money. You gotta do what you gotta do. So I don't regret it at all. I don't want to see that as a complaint. It's just one of the challenges that I faced this week. Final thing in my life this week, I got a haircut. Sort of. I actually cut my hair myself. I get really tired of hair on my ears, I guess. I kind of like long hair, but I don't like it covering my ears. And in the summer, I like it shorter than longer. But I also kind of didn't want to spring for a haircut. I was going to get one, but then I couldn't find an appointment same day. So I'm just like, forget it. I'm going to trim my beard. I'm going to take some time. I'm going to clip over my ears, try to make it look like not like a total hack job. And it's pretty decent. You can be the judge of that. But I feel nice having my new haircut. So that's the note I'm going to leave off for this week. I hope you guys all have something wonderful happen to you this week, and that whatever challenges you face, you'll find a way to overcome or endure. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.